You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into this discussion now. Tonight on Leadership Thursday, I'm joined by Dr. Reuel Khoza, who just released the South African Handbook of Agency, Freedom and Justice, Citizens in Conversation. That book, which is in collaboration with a number of other authors, is calling for an engaged citizenry, ethical leadership to tackle the problems, whether it be governance or justice. So stay with us as we explore his vision for building a better South Africa. Dr. Khoza, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Thank you for your time. Let me start with this question. What inspired your focus on agency as a cornerstone for addressing some of South Africa's social ills?
No, thank you very much, Xoli, for asking that question, and I appreciate the audience also out there. What motivated us to focus on agency, in fact, it was not my original idea. It was the original idea of one Professor Mushenkondo,
yes,
who over the years has been an intellectual activist from as far back as the late 60s during the Black Consciousness movement at the University of Limpopo, which is the university where I did my first 2 degrees. So he challenged a number of issues in the apartheid edifice. So the idea of agency is not something that he just came up with recently. When Frelimo was about to assume power in Mozambique, there were Frelimo rallies at the University of Limpopo, and he was at the forefront. And because I admired him and he was my mentor, I actually worked with him. The newspapers of the time, like the Fatherland and the Transvaal, called him Swart Magman, which means Black Power Man. And they dubbed me his first disciple. So our relationship goes far back, yes, to the 70s. So agency, perhaps the full title of the book is the South African Handbook, if you like, reference book on agency, freedom, and justice. Yeah. But the subtitle is Citizens in Conversation. Yes. So therein lies the main thrust of the purpose of the book. It argues that democracy cannot be outsourced by the citizenry, that democracy is not a spectator sport. It is participative and participatory. Yeah. The citizens should not relate to the Constitution, which is supposed to be our ultimate law, to be the guide, and then arrogate everything to a small group of the elite called political leadership. The citizenry should engage on a regular basis. It doesn't matter whether it's to do with education, it's to do with policy, it's to do with politics or economics, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I'm going to come to the issues confronting us on the home front, but in honor of Professor Mushenkondo, and now that you've invoked Frelimo, we know what is going on in Mozambique right now. What do you think he would have said? What are your thoughts about what's going on in Mozambique? You speak about people, the citizenry, not being a spectator.
Correct.
In their democracies.
Yes.
So are they standing up for what is right in Mozambique? What's your assessment of what's going on there?
My sense is that the citizenry, by not taking things as they come, but calling to book some of the procedures that might actually have been found wanting, are actually exercising their agency. It's quite tragic that Frelimo, one of the freedom fighting movements of our time, if you like, but going far back, and assisted the likes of ourselves to fight the human rights violation that was institutionalized separation, i.e. apartheid.
Yeah.
So I think they should actually listen to the people a lot more. And when it comes to elections, they should actually make sure that they are fair to the voting populace.
Yeah.
If you listen to some of the people that have been interviewed, including some of the very few professors in Mozambique, something was amiss in the manner in which they went about this. And Frelimo has been in power, so they actually come across as a one-party state. The elections were almost parallel with the elections on the western side of our borders. Botswana. And Botswana, small as they are, I think are very exemplary in terms of allowing the citizenry to exercise their democracy.
Let's bring matters closer to home then. The current leadership of our country, do you believe that they are capable of seeing us through the challenges that we face at the moment? Children are dying of what the government has termed foodborne illnesses. The latest is a child who's just 5 years old in Soweto. There are illegal miners continuing with illegal mining activities in the country. It's a long-standing problem. Mm-hmm. Then cost of living crisis. The list is long.
Correct.
Including there, corruption. Do you think that the leaders we have right now are fit for purpose?
I believe they're trying. Some of the aspects, some of the initiatives are kind of too little too late. Part of what they should have done, I think perhaps 2 presidential periods, 3 presidential periods ago, they are only beginning to address now. That would include cooperation between big business and government, because what they are running is not a polity, it's a political economy. So politics and economics should actually be in perfect tango. They should not be adversarial.
Yeah.
Now, for a good number of years, with the South African Communist Party looming very, very large, they tended to be, if you like, the tail that wagged the dog, that actually almost set the tone that the big business is perforce, regardless. Is perforce your enemy. This is monopoly capital. But the reality is there is no country that will be run purely as a polity. Countries that are successful, they have the polity and economics working together. We're not saying that all big business is wholesome, but there is a need to cooperate. That's the only way you could actually derive the kinds of synergies that say you're prosperous as a country, you are also democratic, you also making sure that you create an environment as the political leadership. You create an environment that is conducive for business to thrive. And only by working together that way would you be able to address many of the problems that you address as this particular television station from time to time.
You talk about a synergy between the political establishment and the business establishment,
yes,
which combined is called the political economy. Mm-hmm. Right now, we are in the GNU, Government of National Unity. Mm-hmm. I'd like to get your general thoughts on that and whether you believe that synergy is working within this environment of the GNU?
It's beginning to emerge, partly because what I referred to as the tail that wagged the dog, i.e. the Communist Party wagging the dog that was the ANC. Now you have the big business and government cooperating, collaborating. That is why you're seeing some of the solutions emerging with state-owned enterprises like ESCOM lately. And there is cooperation in huge corporations like Transnet. Even the almost dead SAA is beginning to show signs of recovery.
Apparently they've turned a profit after, what, 12 years?
Certainly. And why? Essentially because they opened up a scope for cooperation as well as collaboration. I'm not talking about something that is totally foreign to South Africa. I was heavily involved shortly after the advent of democracy. I belonged to a group, particularly when Mbeki was leading, first as the assumed prime minister and later on as president. There was this group called the Big Business working with government. And during those times, you will recall that the growth in the economy, the GDP growth was anywhere between 4 and 6%. It was not by accident, it was by design. And that relationship, I want to believe, should have been nurtured and given imprimatur.
What did not work then? When you recall those big years, GDP growing between 4 to 6%, one of the people, in fact, we just referred to him now, he was in Stilfontein at that situation there, Zuma. He would constantly go on about a jobless growth.
Yes.
What has not worked under the ANC government, and do you believe that the current GNU is that vehicle to lead us to the promised land? When I say the promised land, people need jobs.
Yes.
That's why you have Stilfontein that is
Yes.
happening, unless you believe otherwise.
I don't believe otherwise. I believe a number of things went wrong. During Mbeki's presidency, there was growth, but it was based on a policy called GEAR. That policy was very, very sound, but it did not take everything into account, where growth that would nurture the growth of small businesses. There were those who argued amongst the business sector for a duological economy, i.e. big business cooperating with small business. A small business supplying what they need to address, where launching themselves and growing and providing services to the community were concerned. That level of cooperation was not fully addressed. But what we tended to experience was what was then called trickle-down economy. It doesn't quite work because the flaws there would tend to be that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Now, that got compounded by a presidency that, upon assuming the presidency, did a number of things that were actually almost fatal for any political economy. First, got derisive and contemptuous of learned Africans. If you don't want clever clever blacks, by implications, you want stupid ones. And nothing could have been more tragic, more of a setback, because thriving economies actually do make use of the people they have educated.
Yeah.
So you educate people and they become clever, knowledgeable, and you then castigate knowledgeability. It cannot be sound. But in due course, the same presidency essentially mortgaged our political economy to an Indian family. And what we saw then unfolding was what is called pre-Bendalism. In other words, a form of government where you disperse or dispense largesse.
Yeah.
You reward people who sing praises to you, not people who really help you solve national problem, who are not necessarily, people who are not necessarily committed to serving the national interest.
You raise two critical points, the government of the day and whether or not they're able to solve the problems we're dealing with. I'm going to make use of an example of what currently besets the country. And then you talk about a government that decided that they were going to mortgage this country to an Indian family. And I've got a very interesting take on that too. But first, let's take a break. And when we return, we'll pick up on those. You're watching our Leadership Thursday segment. My guest tonight is Dr. Reuel Khoza, a thought leader in his own right. Dr. Khoza, I realize that this could be a very long discussion, and I need to get to the detail of the discussion before we lose the viewers. There's extreme poverty in the country, and I think you've just agreed that Stilfontein is a representation of that.
Yeah.
I would like your thoughts on how you believe government is addressing this matter. Is it the right way? But I want to set that up with these comments from the minister in the presidency a few days ago, I would say.
And then there was a question of whether we're going to send help underground to the Zama South Africans. You want us to send help to criminals? You want us to send help to criminals, honestly? We're not sending help to criminals. We're going to smoke them out. They will come out. We're not sending help to criminals. Criminals are not to be helped. Criminals are to be persecuted.
How do you, what are your thoughts on that? I'm not going to try and poison your mind, but we're working against time, so I'd like your short, to the point reaction to that.
My sense is that the approach is unfortunate. It's as unfortunate as it is tragic. You don't sort out the citizenry. You engage the citizenry. You don't smoke people out as if they were venomous snakes. The last time my father used smoking something out was when Black Mamba got into a hole not very far from our homestead. So you deal with it by smoking it out because you don't know when it will come out and what it might be doing to you. Yeah. But here you're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with the citizenry. You're dealing with managing an industry that at one stage was the premier industry, mining. You don't manage it by being insensitive. So there is a sense in which I believe there was gross insensitivity there. Choice of words were unfortunate.
You talk about leadership. Gwede Mantashe is the minister leading this sector. I don't remember seeing him anyway.
He was conspicuous by his absence.
Do you believe he's providing leadership right now?
Well, if he's providing any particular, in this particular instance, it's belated, it is not responsive, it is unfortunate because it does have a wealth of knowledge. That knowledge should actually have been deployed because he was on the other side of the polarization or polarity, organized labor versus big business, mining magnates. He understands both worlds. One would have expected him to intervene a lot more timeously. As it is now, we don't know how many more people will actually be coming out as corpses. And the way to deal with that is not to show this kind of insensitivity, but to engage. The people like Vavi, even Matunja, the other evening actually came up with suggestions that would really be solutions.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, my understanding is that the best way, I've just joined a medium-sized mining group, which operates here and in Zambia. We believe that the solution is to actually legislate for the so-called Zamazamas, who are actually small-scale miners.
Is that artisanal mining you are advocating for?
Artisanal mining, give an opportunity for them to actually ply their skills.
I don't want to belabor this point, Dr. Khoza, but because it is an ongoing story, government says artisanal mining legislation is in place.
Yes.
Yes, it might not be at the scale where perhaps the Zamazamas might want it to. Is that where this should go, this conversation,
Well,
that
if it is
expanded?
If it's not of the requisite scale, why don't they upscale? We're talking about survival here. We're talking about people unemployed. We're talking about people having to put food on the table. You cannot say, well, there is a flaw. The flaw is it is minor scale. If it's minor, do something as the leadership to upscale and channel those energies, channel those skills, channel those efforts at survival in a manner that is enabling, as opposed to saying, well, we are going to enforce the law and enforce it as though the people were made for the law and not the law made for the people.
I'm going to move on quickly to the second part of what I had promised to talk about, and that is the presidency of former President Jacob Zuma, or should we say the administration of former President Jacob Zuma. And you have said that he sought to mortgage this country to an Indian family. I put that question, although it wasn't the way you phrased it, I put it to the newly appointed Secretary General of the MK party, of which President Zuma now leads. And I said to him, how do you hope to attract people to this party when it is led by someone whom the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture said this country saw the phenomenon of state capture under him? I'd like for you to listen for yourself to what the response from Mr. Shibambu was just last night.
The biggest scam in South Africa's politics and political history was this nonsense or rubbish called state capture narrative, which was driven for a very long time. Some of us got to realize even before Controversies the party was formed that were driven into a wrong agenda to pursue President Zuma because he did not want to account to the white capitalist establishment. There's never been an instance, not even once, where the white capitalist establishment got to direct and micromanage President Zuma. He associated with progressive forces domestically and at a global level because he understood the agenda that he's fighting for.
What do you make of those comments?
I think those are his opinions, but I would beg to differ fundamentally. We have a government by constitution, a constitutional democracy. And the same leader that is speaking about has actually nudged people to say that if they were to come into power, they will do away with the constitutional democracy and have parliamentary democracy, which actually percolates and crystallizes to government by men as opposed to government by constitutional dictates. So I'll differ with him fundamentally. And as I say, he has his right to have those kinds of opinions. But what worries me even more here is what people have observed as the emergence of ethnic jingoism.
That's what he disputed last night. That was my opening question to him, to say this party is viewed as a Zulu nationalist party.
Correct.
And he said it couldn't be further from the truth.
But as I say, people have opinions. I mean, a fact does not become a lie simply because you actually advocate something to the contrary. There is no question that it is predominantly ethnic-based. And if you look at a great number of the people that have joined it, it is fugitives from the law. And one does not want to actually wax poetic about that, but any South African citizen who is observant knows just that. A good number of the people who actually constitute that party have been fingered by the Zondo Commission. And until and unless they actually absolve themselves, cleanse themselves, in due course, their leadership will actually be a little bit questionable because they have not actually addressed that perception.
I'm sad because time has run out, but I've got to put the question to you. As a businessman, a leader in corporate South Africa, the 30 years of democracy has seen a big gap emerge between black wealth or people who are in the black middle class and those that are white. I listened to you a few days ago and you said there are more white millionaires today in South Africa than there was 30 years ago.
Undoubtedly.
So where have things gone wrong here? How do you bridge that gap?
The legislative and regulatory framework was worked upon. Where we failed as a democracy was to actually engage as many citizens as we should have to get their opinions, such that the legislation and the activists in the citizenry got to be aligned in a manner that would actually question the ascendancy of the millionaires and billionaires that I spoke about. Steinhoff, we could actually have monitored that very closely. And unfortunately, a board that was put together, which I was requested to chair, arrived a little too late on the scene. But not only that, once we had turned that organization around, which could have been done with other organizations, which could have been done also with enablement, active enablement by law, was not actually done. There are a number of things that could be done even in the agricultural sector. Given a chance, we could actually talk about that at length. because the perception is that you cannot be black and be a successful farmer. And a good number of initiatives have actually exploded that myth and are beginning to address food security, which is key. Now, all of those kinds of things could, in fact, be enabled and facilitated by black economic empowerment. The hospitality industry as well could be given a fillip, and it will be a major job creator. And so, you know, one could actually go on. So where did things go wrong? Yeah. Where we have openings for real participation, for real engagement, for real support and push, we don't.
Dr. Reuel Khoza, I want to thank you very much for your time. I wish we had a little bit more time, but so many questions I prepped for you here, but unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to thank you, though, for your time.
Thank you very much, Xoli, and thanks to the audience out there.